I mean, the thing is, we're not a subscription, we're free. So we look at what is marketing to get people in the door. And then on top of that, was that a convincing story combined with our product offering? Because we only get paid, just like standard TV and the internet based on ads sold due to engagement.
Right. Makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Challenging business model. And I think there's not a lot of these paid for streaming providers. So it's gotten thinned out a little bit. So I guess gives you more room to play with. Okay. I see Laura in class. Laura, welcome to class. Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Thank you so much for taking the time. The class has been with me for 90 minutes. Guys, do you want to take a quick 2-minute break? Bio break, grab a coffee, come back. Let me just introduce Laura to the situation and get us situated.
Sounds great.
Okay, 12:03. Thank you so much for making the time, Laura. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Any problem jumping on? Any Zoom issues?
No, Zoom was easy peasy. When it works, it really works.
Okay. 9 o'clock. So you've got your coffee ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. I'll get you so the class, about advanced attribution that we're teaching, but specifically in this particular class, we are teaching what's called shaping measurement strategy. And what are the different pieces of a measurement stack? I mean, you're obviously very well versed with marketing mix modeling, incrementality testing, and then variety of lift tests you can do, and the need for triangulation, right? You got to put them together, and you have to be able to triangulate what the North Star is. I think you used this word. I think I'm inspired by you. You said there is no real truth. You have to triangulate. There's no one answer. That's the truth. The truth exists somewhere in the middle of the triangulation. You have a band of truth that you have to accept with, and then work with that type of thing. So we teach that in class, and this class specifically about the infrastructure. What are the different pieces? How do you stack them together? How they come together? And how do you hook them up in a way that, and it also changes if you're a really young brand, you don't need a lot of sophistication. You can probably just use last click. And then as you get to a certain place, you need something, maybe even a simple post-purchase survey. Once you get a little bit further, you probably need some testing, and then you need a media mix model, and then you need triangulation, then reporting, and all. So we kind of walk them through how
exactly. Yeah, you've done. Yeah, that's the answer. You just described it perfectly.
Okay, we teach it in the context of a class, and of course we would love to hear your perspectives on how you've seen this work in practice. Okay, this is a classroom. I've done a lot of work as a vendor, putting it together for brands. Now you experiencing it viscerally as the owner of a brand is a very different thing. As you grow through the growing pains of trying to growth hack the brand while trying to understand uncertainty in measurement and trying to make the right investment decisions and be a good steward of the investment and grow while keeping investors happy and board happy and setting expectations. That can be a razor's edge to walk. Yeah. I think the class would love to hear what that feels like.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. And I've seen it from the teeny tiny and the ginormous. So I've got a few different perspectives. I've done a bunch of sort of board and advisory work with really early stage. And of course, textile was billions of dollars over time.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun to pick your brain. Let me just pick up my notes here, if you don't mind. Do you have? I think that they're coming back, streaming back. While
Well, wait. We can wait till everybody's back from the break. Breaks are good. How long is your time together today?
So we it's an intense class, 3.5 hours every class.
Okay, you guys are going for it, huh?
3.5 hours every class, 6 classes. So about 20 hours of lecture. And then, of course, a lot of pre-materials, post materials. And then if the class is interested, they can do homework and projects and stuff like that. And I
Who doesn't love homework? I mean, come on. I'm sure everybody's doing the homework.
Thank you. That's not true. But I'm trying to see if we can stimulate more work that happens and turn that into case studies or not. Some of them that half the class typically, this particular class is a little bit of an anomaly. Half the class is typically people who want to be consultants in this space. And I think I told you, I'm trying to build a marketplace for attribution services. And I'm trying to train consultants, certify them as attribution consultants, and make them available to brands as consultants they can use. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just give me a day pass. Let me try it out for a bit. And eventually maybe I'll become like an avid swimmer. That's the idea, is that can we kind of break it up and make it an Uber for attribution? So half the class typically is consultants. Half the class is brands like Tubi, which is, Carl is an analytics leader in Tubi. And he brought his team over. It's all his team today. And have the class brand spending the teams over to learn about attribution, right? So you're just catching sort of a cohort, which is actually half of the class is missing, honestly. Some of them are all working professionals, so we don't get full attendance. It's hard to get everybody.
Hard. No worries.
Yeah. Okay, so give me 1 second. Let me grab questions. Okay, I have it here. Okay, so quick introduction for one of my favorite leaders in the space. I've always had a big admiration for Laura, and just having a chance to like meet her and pitch to her, it's a fun experience. She's always like poking holes and like asking you to asking all the tough questions, pressure testing our ideas and whatnot. So I've had a privilege of doing that a couple of times in my career, and she's always helped me grow in stretching my ideas. She used to be president of textile, but you had a lot of roles along the way.
I did. I'm happy to, if it's easier, I'm happy to describe it real quick, if that's just by way of introduction. So hi guys, everyone usually calls me LJ. I also go by Laura. That was the name my parents give me, but LJ is kind of the name I hear most often in my work. And I spent a decade building the textile ecosystem. Textile has a bunch of consumer-facing brands. We have Fabletics and Savage X Fenty and Just Fab and True Dazzle and Fab Kids. And I joined Adam and Don, who are the founders over there, back in 2013 when Fab Kids was acquired. And we built some really beautiful, great stuff. In that work, I ran advertising across the portfolio for several years. And in that moment in my life, I really, really geeked out on attribution. I'm not a data scientist by training, but I just got wild. We were spending a lot of money. We were spending millions of dollars. And it was important to me that we were trying to do that as well as we could. So I went really deep on seeking to understand what efficacy in advertising really looked like. And went down all the rabbit holes and came back up and went on to go. I ended up moving on. I'm no longer with textile. I spent a couple of years after that. I CEO'd the Just Fab, basically the shoe division, the Just Fab, Shoe Dazzle, and Fab Kids businesses when we carved up the textile business into 3 ecosystems. And then earlier this year, I passed the baton to 2 folks on my team who are now co-CEOs over there. I'm taking the summer off to take my little baby girl to college, and then I'm going to start a new gig in the fall. But I have encountered Madonna a handful of times, a couple of different companies actually, teaching and selling attribution services, and I think he knows me as probably one of the more feisty ones in all of those conversations. But I do find it really endlessly fascinating to try to figure out what works and why. Separate from the textile stuff, I do a lot of work with really early stage companies. I think the work to think about attribution when you're spending, $100,000 a month is really different than when you're spending millions and millions of dollars across a portfolio. And so I've got points of view on both, on sort of what are the challenges and questions, and what's an appropriate level of tooling and inquiry at those different stages. So I'm happy to share my experience. I'm a fan of Madan, happy to just be here and help and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Let's start there. Actually, it's a great introduction. Thank you so much. Now so a lot of us in the ecosystem know textile as a really data forward a brand and a company and an ecosystem. Some of the smartest growth marketers work there. Some of the sharpest analytics minds work there. You guys invest a lot in data. We have a culture for data and measurement. What's the secret to building a great data and experimentation culture? Is there a secret, and what is it? We'd love to hear it.
I think there's probably lots of secrets. I think most good things start by just wanting it and caring about it. And for me, and for the ethos at Textile in general, it was always about let's give the people what they want. We actually don't create ads just to please ourselves. We create ads to drive response, and we create a lot of them. And so it's important, therefore, to point everybody's energy and attention at like what's the outcome we're seeking. So that all the nerds and all the artists and all the scientists can all be be sort of working towards the same outcome, which is that we're trying to find the most cost efficient way to delight people and get them to our site and get them to check out and become members. And with that goal clarity, everything else just gets set free. And so I think the ethos was a very data rich, data driven culture, but it was data not just for the sake of data, but data to play the game well of actually trying to discern and understand what the people want, so that we could lean into that and repeatedly, relentlessly iterate to keep making it better.
So when you great point. How much of the people who walk in the door care more about data analytics than caring about applying it to the business, right? I mean, is that something you run into, or is that something that changed? The culture is set and people walk in and they actually want to apply all their skills to the business, or they're more worried about their skills and just like playing with toys? And how does it land for you guys?
We have some of the best data folks, I think, that are out there. And I personally hired them right out of college and grew them up. So they built like phenomenal, gorgeous things. But so we have really, really, really like people who know data inside and out and wake up every morning trying to connect the dots between all the data sources. But I think the reason it works, you were asking the question culturally, why does it work? And I think it works because it feeds this desire to do fundamentally good advertising. And fundamentally good advertising is not just, oh, that's cute, but it's like, oh, wow, that moved the needle. That drove traffic, that drove response.
Right. There is some internal motivation that gets created seeing success happen. When you move the needle, I've seen that for businesses I work for as well. When you get shared success, it's kind of a drug, and it kind of like gets into people.
Yeah.
And
the data can make you better at that. Because the real game in advertising is it's really creative testing, right? High velocity creative testing across a variety of different services that you're buying ads on. And so the ability to test and understand which of those are actually making a difference or not allows you to do better work and do more rapid, data-driven creative testing.
Test, learn, grow. Now, let's just unpack that a little bit. So in terms of, I know that I worked with you across multiple companies. I pitched you multi-touch attribution, then I came back to pitch you incrementality testing. We worked together on that for many years. But you've always been an advocate of, multiple approaches. And just, unpack that for us. How do you see the world of measurement? And because you need measurement to drive decisions, and data is a big part of that. What's your religion around data and measurement?
My religion. Well, I got religion the hard way. It was sort of one of those, challenge. I was so in love with the idea that if you could take all your users and you could map all of their touch points against them, and then, run a beautiful little model that would allow you to give multi-touch attribution from a bottoms-up basis. Wouldn't that be gorgeous? And wouldn't it be so cool to understand the efficacy of each of the different channels and be able to, break that down to the different levels? And we went pretty deep and spent some money and tried to go and build that. And it turns out like you just can't. You just can't, and you couldn't in 2000, whatever year was that, maybe 16, 17, it's been a number of years. You couldn't then, and you even less can now, because the privacy restrictions have just gotten deeper. So I'm probably not telling you anything y'all don't know, but that's actually not possible, because so much of what's happening is not click-through data. If it was all click-through data, cool, then you can attach all your UTM strings and you can parse it all together and gorgeous fun. But a lot of what people see, you basically can only get access to the fact that they've seen it through pixel data, and it's all sort of view through does matter. These impressions do have an impact on the overall program, and you can't attach those impressions to users in a way that you can truly do bottoms up attribution meaningfully. You just can't. There's so many levels of extraction to be able to try to get the same. It's just not possible unless you're just using only one advertising. And if you were using only one advertising, then you wouldn't need attribution in the first place. So it defeats the purpose. So you can't do that. And so because you can't do that, you got to do other things, right? And so, over time, we have used all the different things that are out there, whether it's lift testing or top-down models, or really just heuristics to understand the range. When you look at the sort of within each ecosystem, what is Meta telling you the CAC is, and it's different depending on which attribution window you choose. So being able to understand how different it is across different attribution windows gives you a sense of what's going on. And then you got to kind of be able to look at all of these things and triangulate, which is why it's really interesting moving from trying to sell bottoms up, top-down bottoms up multi-touch attribution once upon a time, moved to the next business was, hey, let's actually do lift testing. Let's do a variety of lift testing and try to understand results that way, which is now moved to, hey, let's actually train smart people to be able to understand multiple ways of thinking about this. And it's interesting because I think ultimately what you guys are doing here is the answer. I don't think there's one answer. I think there could be one answer if you could actually attach all the touch points at the user level and do that, but you can't. So I think being able to, once you're spending enough that it makes sense to make this investment, I think doing a top-down model, understanding what's happening in each individual ecosystem, doing periodic lift testing to be able to validate the assumptions from your top-down models. Sort of it's the triangulation of these things over time that helps you.
So unpack this a little bit. Beautiful, and what we teach in class. So clearly, you're speaking to the choir here. But unpack this, how this works operationally. I don't know if you guys do QBRs or monthly business reviews or whatever. How does triangulation work in a meeting like that? Do you actually have a sort of situation where you have Facebook, broad audiences, campaigns for last month drove, this is our estimate, and there are 3 estimates here side by side, and you figure out, do we spend more, spend less? Is that how you look at it? You line up all the decisions, and most decisions line up one way and good to go, and few don't, and that's what you talk about. Just give us a little bit insight into how the process works when you triangulate operationally.
There's interestingly, there is one true way to look at it. And this is true if you're a tiny company spending $1,000 a day, or if you're, sort of at the upper echelon of advertising spend. And that is the one thing that doesn't lie is all the dollars you spent and all the new users you got, or all the orders you got, whichever metric you're looking at. For us, when you're doing memberships, you look at the cost per new subscriber, but you could also look at just the cost per order. There's a variety of different ways, but that's the truth. And so you talk about it can't lie, because you spent a certain number of dollars, you got a certain outcome. And that's the thing that ultimately you're trying to move that needle, and that's true, small or big. And so, I think a very good place to start is you start there. You start with, what are my goals? What am I trying to do? What's happening on the whole and on the average? Total program, total outcomes. Are we happy? Are we unhappy? And from there, you get experimental to understand, right? You know, if I did a little more of this and a little less of that, whether it's creative campaigns or whether it's media mix decisions that you're making, ultimately you're experimenting towards trying to make the whole program
much better and move the business for you.
person.
And is there a lot you have to do to get people aligned? I think at one point I remember talking to you and you said you had to create room for experimentation. Like this can't just work. You can't like assume everything will work the way you plan. There's going to be hits and misses and, you know, wins and losses and stuff like that. And in every way, both from a creative perspective, from a media targeting perspective, analytics perspective, how do you create the space for a program that allows you to try and fail and so that you can succeed and grow? Is there some magic to that?
Well, there's just no other option, right? I mean, how do you create space to learn and grow? I mean, I don't know any other way, because, you know, you can try to do something and 100% of the things are not going to work. It's just not, unless you're exceedingly lucky, and I've never seen it. And so it seems like there's fairly well-trodden path towards you know, testing and learning as the way to be in the world. I think that's not a concept that anyone's really arguing about anymore. And so then it just becomes a question of how do you do it well, right? And I think how you do it well is you stay really anchored on what is the program as a whole doing over time, total spend, total outcomes. Again, be that new users or total orders. And then you create room you're trying to make that better. Like that's it. You're trying to make that bigger, scaled and more efficient, period, full stop. And so being able to test and learn into what drives those outcomes, whether it's scale or efficiency, is the whole game.
How would you advise marketers, like let's assume that there's a VP of marketing in the class, right? In fact, Carl is he's not exactly he's a VP of analytics, but imagine there's a VP of marketing here, and she is working with the CEO, CMO, maybe there is no CMO, and then there's a board. How would she communicate that this is what she's trying to do, and create the space for her to have this conversation, this analytical, data-driven growth conversation with senior leaders? What would you say she should be doing? How should she be communicating her vision for her test, learn, grow execution, so that, you know, she has some space to try and things work and not work, and she's not going to have her neck kind of choked the next time she walks in the door?
Sure. Yeah. So going back, and this may sound repetitive, but I think getting alignment on the total program goals, has to be the place to start. In most businesses that I know want to grow, and most businesses that I know want to grow as efficiently as they possibly can. And so getting real clear on what's the history, what's the goal for the total program, and then having a point of view about what are the areas that we want to experiment on. And, you know, and sort of the classic ones are media mix and sort of various forms of campaign and creative testing. So coming in with the point of view of, hey, here's where we've been, here's where we're at, here's where you're trying to go, here's some different things that we can try. And we can test them and try to see if they move the needle. And I can't promise you that all of them are going to work, but here are the levers we can pull. And the way we're gonna decide if we did it right is, did the whole program get better or worse?
Fantastic. Oh, that's a great marker. Just look at the whole program as you move the needle. That's the incontrovertible needle. And outside of all the analytics, the finance numbers can't lie, is the point. Okay. Outside of you, LJ, who do you think is doing a great job at this? From a marketing leader, who would you call as a marketing leader you respect, who's done a fantastic job at exactly this execution?
Well, I mean, I really do think, I'm not at Textile anymore, but I really do think that the data guys at like Danny Briglin, like phenomenal what she's built. Bailey Minnie, who's on her team, like really extraordinary work.
Yeah.
Another person I really respect in the industry for just being a great mind in attribution. A guy named Sean Odlum. Do you know Sean?
I do.
Sean ran Bliss Point for a while. Bliss Point was acquired. I can't remember which agency, but was acquired by another agency. But he's been a long time just someone who is really trying to understand complex things and create simplified ideas. So he's phenomenal, a phenomenal attribution mind. I think that the Ruggable team has done a really good job. So I'm not working with them very hands-on anymore, but in the early days I was on the board for them. But they've scaled, all the way to the moon effectively, and have done a really good job of staying data-driven end to end on that. I also worked with the Dr. Squatch team briefly in the early days. They're another team that and Squatch was phenomenal because their creative was just so good. It was so funny. If you've seen the Dr. Squatch videos. So they were really excellent at sort of threading the needle to be able to understand what was happening in a really direct response way, and then periodically throw in a Super Bowl commercial just to sort of build audience and keep it exciting, sort of build the audience and then convert everybody over time. So they were also really good and experimental creatively and from a media mix perspective. Really respect what they have done as well.
Yeah, I was with Sean yesterday. Actually, it was a meeting together. We had a seminar. We're in the same client execution together. Yeah, and Ruggable is Bumsu and team, right? My memory serves me right? At Bumsu.
Yeah, I worked closely. I know Bumsu. We're closely with Linda Lay, who just has recently moved on to her next best thing. But Bumsu's been there since the early days.
Oh, for a long time. He's a sharp mind. Fantastic. Thank you for throwing that in. I'm trying to get Bailey to come on the class and teach us a little bit as well. And a work in progress. Let's see if we get there. Okay, so now thank you. That was phenomenal. Now, one challenge we've been having leaders like you show up and talk and whatnot. Every time I ask this question, I ask them, okay, how is the finance partnership working for you? I mean, have you ever seen a marketing finance partnership work well? Is there a CMO CFO partnership that and 8 out of 10 times I'll be like, no, it hasn't worked. I haven't seen it work well. There's a few people who said, yeah, I've had this one CFO work with, she was fantastic and stuff like that. What is your sense? How that, of course, you are an example of making it work, I think, but do you see it working in the industry broadly where more finance leaders know how to work with marketing leaders, or is there like a magic sort of ABC formula that we can offer up so that those two parties can work together to create growth in a way that's less friction bound?
Yeah, I think I've seen it work well in lots of places, actually. And I think nobody wants to feel dumb, right? And sometimes when you start throwing around all the buzzwords about attribution this and attribution that and the lift test over here, it can feel murky and it can feel silly. I think the best way to build a really strong partnership, and this is going to sound repetitive, is to go back to the whole program. Like how many dollars do you want to spend? What's the outcome you want to get? And like, that's the anchor. That's the anchor that is indisputable. It's not shades of gray. It's totally black and white. So being able to have an anchor that marketing and analytics and finance people can all agree, like, this is the thing that we're going to watch and try to move, I think is the key to
just trust play a role there. Yeah.
Because it doesn't lie, right? Like we spent these many dollars. Like, you can go, you can go look.
Somebody got to check for it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let me pause and open the floor a little bit. Class here. Anything for LJ?
I think one of the things that often comes up is the swim lane. So, for example, we've got members of our company here that work both on growth marketing and brand marketing, and then all up at P&A View. And I would call it the I want everything approach, where the CEO says, oh, you're supposed to drive this and you're supposed to drive this. but later on, those KPIs end up commingling. And as soon as measurement provided, for example, measurement tools now allow you to look at what your behavioral metrics are from brand media. And holding things, this gets back to the goal setting on an annual basis, which is, okay, this team, drive brand lift, your goal is to get this to this bed. But sooner or later, with those things overlapping and commingling, and this is not the same as the holistic, MTA thing. This is the holistic, like what happens with the blending and muddling of media tactics that can be measured in more ways than one. And how do you hold, I don't know if weighting, but credit according to goal and keep that standard. In the past, we've put out big publishing digital measurement playbooks that says this is only measured by this. Once in a while, we'll look at that to understand synergies, but how do you hold those conversations, or how do you think about that overlap and blending or muddying of the waters?
That's a great question. And I believe deeply in content creation, believe deeply in good creatives, and believe not at all in, and also believe in, as our organizations get larger, having some notion of swim lanes so people can, execute with excellence within a scope that they can control. So I believe in all those things. I don't believe that fundamentally brand marketing and performance marketing are different games. I think they are commingled. And while I understand the attraction of having different measures and different outcomes, they influence each other, period. Like it just it's impossible. And so one of the things that you can, do is again, I always look for what's an anchor that everybody can agree is really an anchor. And so one of the things is the past, right? So within any one of those, measures, if you will, whether it's looking just strictly at CPA, or whether it's looking at different engagement metrics or sort of brand trust, whatever the case may be, is looking at time trends over, looking at trends of that particular metric over time and understanding, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Can you see moments of inflection where something happened and it shifted and changed? And you're looking for those things. So it's hard when you've got hundreds of people, depending on how big an organization is, when you've got hundreds of people trying to hack at different parts of marketing, there's comfort in having something to look at to see if you move the needle. Ultimately, at the end of the day, again, total dollars spent and total outcomes, are the answer that everybody has to live with. But any other metric that you choose to look at is important as signal and as data to make sure that things are moving in a good direction. But I wouldn't get too attached. I would look at trending over time and change points to look for signals.
Fantastic point. Fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions, class? Actually, I got a couple of questions from people in the class who could not attend. One question is, what is the most compelling insight that you've kind of come across in your career? What's a compelling media insight, customer insight, consumer insight, and you've kind of experienced, running businesses?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a nerd first approach. I love all the numbers, I really do. But one thing that's really, really, really clear to me is that what actually moves the needle in marketing is creative, and being able to create high velocity creative testing that can be data driven, like that's the game. And when I say data driven, finding a way to discern relative impact from various different creative attempts, that's the whole game. And people who are creative first are better when they look at data, and people who are data first I think, get better when they can appreciate, find your own model and framework for thinking about how do we understand which one of these different elements of the creative is actually moving the needle here.
Fantastic. My God, what a great point. I know we have you just for a few more minutes, but let me ask you, give us your advice for up and coming leaders here. I mean, there's a few people here, and there's another at least like 7-8 people who are going to watch this class after you're done. So what's your advice for up and coming leaders, marketing leaders, analytics leaders, anything you would leave us with?
Oh gosh, have a little fun. That's always a good plan. Enjoy. This is enjoyable work. I mean, we're really just searching for signal of what's moving the needle. And that can be, I think, a really joyful exploration. The data is getting better all the time. Actually, in some cases it's getting murkier and but on the whole and on the average, we have access to this treasure trove of data. And if we can point our attention on following the signals, that will create advertising that people clearly enjoy. And the way they tell us that they enjoy it is they come and respond to it by engaging with our businesses. That's fun. And it's just hard enough that I think you guys are choosing careers that will keep you busy for a long time, because this is just fundamentally not easy. So good luck and enjoy, and smart of you to get trained up by Madan, one of the brightest minds in attribution, to sort of get out there and have all the tools to do this well.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Much appreciate that. And thank you for your time in class. We are grateful for your
Of course.
time.
Of
All
course.
right.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.